All right. So get your boxed wine ready. We're going to talk about the Lagos. Um, Actually, we're going to talk about Falun Gong and its ties to officials' ties to Western intelligence agencies. Really, we only discuss uh, the American side of this, but there's plenty of Anglo-Israeli ties as well. Um, if you want a fuller expose, the last video I made, I believe, will be your introduction. And then this is one of many appendices that I'm going to continue to do, and I'm going to put it in a YouTube playlist. Was just looking through certain various connections, and I actually found one that connects it to the Open Society Institute of George Soros. We already knew it was connected to Ned through Mark Palmer's support of that, and that ties into the heart of the what can be called the right-wing Jewish establishment that has taken over the right-wing Israeli establishment, which has taken over practically all Jewish organization in the world. The leftist Israelis do not have a strong voice anywhere. Um, it's the Ariel Sharon faction in Israel, even still, that has created the major ties into the Soviet Union. It's called the Israeli Soviet Trust, etc. So um, you have to understand where they stand on the political spectrum, left or right, in one country. When it comes back to Israel, Israel still remains an incredibly uh, fascistic regime that idolizes Ziv Jabotinsky and Chaim Weizmann, um, and oppresses Jews within its own borders, etc., etc. And if you're a friend of Israel, you should realize that this is not good. It means that Israel basically has to become a headquarters state for NATO, well, really Anglo-American establishment. Um, but yeah, Mark Palmer's linked into that through Ronald P. Lauder, and they were involved in similar type operations in Eastern Europe through the founding of the Central European Network, it's a TV network. But so we'll go on with this article here, and I think Mark Palmer was mentored by Henry Kissinger. So there's another mega group connection. The Hollinger Corporation, um, Hollinger International, which we've talked about before, was one of the initial back in the 1990s, one of the initial supporters of Falun Gong, and in particular, I mean, calling out its leader through the London Telegraph, which was under heavy control by Conrad Black and his associates. And once again, it ties back into the mega group and all of that. Um, then you have Conrad Black actually being the head with Richard Pearl, who even mainstream textbooks concerning corporate malfeasance, etc., show Richard Pearl as an Israeli spy, as a somebody who was involved in heavy white collar crime, um, whose main purpose was to serve as kind of a go between all of these interlocking directorates of all these different corporations. Um, but he was also on the board of trustees of the Hudson Institute. So the Hudson Institute is one of the biggest um, influencers uh, directly working with Falun Gong, namely through Michael Horowitz. But interesting enough, the I believe the chairman Alan Tesler owns something called Epoch Holdings, which could or could not be related to the Epoch Times and Epoch Media Group. Um, but as far as that goes, just remember the importance of the Hudson Institute, which had Conrad Black and Richard Pearl and all these people initially running it, basically setting the agenda for the future generations. And also, the Hudson Institute is like two 2 minute walk, less than a 2 minute walk away in Washington D.C. from. That means across the street from the Washington D.C. headquarters of Epoch Times. So they work very closely together. Anyway, anti-China cult. This is an article from the moonofalabama.org from August 21st, 2019. It's called the moonofalabama.org, and the article is Anti-China Cult Gets U.S. Government Money, Runs Large Pro-Trump Ad Campaign. And this provides some good new information. Falun Gong is a cult which claims to have millions of followers. It was founded in China by Li Hongzhi, who thinks of himself as a higher being. Falun Gong mixes Taoism and Buddhism with nutty ideas, conservative politics, and strong anti-communism. Some of Mr. Li's pronouncements are certainly unconventional. Some would say just plain strange. He believes aliens walk the earth, and he has reportedly said that he can walk through walls and make himself invisible. Mr. Li says that he is a being from a higher level who come to help humankind from destruction it could face as the result of rampant evil. In 1999, the cult attempted to gain political power in China. The government shut it down for pushing its followers to not use medical therapies. Li Hongzhi and some of his followers moved to the United States as the cult is strongly anti-communist. The U.S. government used it to put pressure on China. Some institutions and companies related to Falun Gong are openly funded with U.S. government money. The main media outlet of Falun Gong organization is the Epoch Times. NBC reports of astonishing growth as a pro-Trump social media force. By the numbers, there is no bigger advocate of President Donald Trump on Facebook than Epoch Times. The New York-based nonprofit news outlet has spent more than 1.5 million on about 11,000 pro-Trump advertisements in the last 6 months. According to data from Facebook's advertising archive, more than any organization outside of the Trump campaign itself and more than most Democratic presidential candidates have spent on their own campaigns. Those video ads in which identified spokesmen thumb through a newspaper to praise Trump, peddle conspiracy theories about the deep state, and criticize fake news media strike a familiar tone in the online conservative news ecosystem. Epoch Times looks like many of conservative outlets that have gained followings in the recent years. In April, the height of its ad spending videos from Epoch Media Group, which includes the Epoch Times and digital video outlet New Tang Dynasty, or NTD, combined for around 3 billion views on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, ranking 11th among all video creators across platforms and outranking every other traditional news publisher. The Epoch Times brought in 8.1 million in revenue in 2017, double what it had brought in the previous year, and reported spending 7.2 million on printing newspaper and creating web and media programs. Blah 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 blah. New Tang Dynasty's 2017 revenue, according to the IRS records, was $18 million, a 150% increase over the year before it spent $16.2 million. NBC report says it is not clear where the web and media money that it gets invested in pro-Trump advertisements actually comes from. Here's a hunch. What NBC does not mention is that Falun Gong is a U.S. anti-China asset. The Bush-Cheney administration used the Falun Gong to internationally embarrass China's then President Hu Jintao when he visited Washington. PRC President Hu Jintao had the misfortune of visiting Washington in 2006 when the Vice President Cheney and his militant faction were riding high. China's role as an independent the Bush administration policies on Iran as well as North Korea did not make for a particularly hospitable environment for Hu's visit. The capper to the disastrous visit was the outburst during Hu's speech on the White House lawn by Dr. Wang Wenyi of the Falun Gong spiritual practice movement, who gained access to the speech as credentialed correspondents. Ming Pao reported more categorically that Dr. Wang declaimed in a piercing voice, shouted exhortations such as "Heaven will destroy the Chinese communists, leave the party, 10 million heroes have left the party, when will you leave? Judge Yang Zemin, Lu Gao, and Zhao Yukang, and Falun practice is great." The revelation that the White House had granted Dr. Wang a temporary pass in the name of the Epoch Times probably did not elicit a forgiving shrug from the Chinese government. Dr. Wang was not a journalist by profession. She was a pathologist and the lead researcher on Falun Gong's hot button issue, the alleged vivisection of Falun Gong practitioners by Chinese government at the facility in Shenyang and the sale of their organs for transplant purposes. I have to add, most of the watchdog groups that say that Falun Gong is having their organs harvested are run by Falun Gong, whether they be in the UK or in Australia or in the United States. And beyond Falun Gong's well known hostility to the Chinese Communist Party and Dr. Wang's central role in Falun Gong, most impassioned crusade against the Chinese regime, her prior personal history of confronting Hu Jintao was a matter of public. The Secret Service is usually quick in removing hecklers from the official White House events. It made no effort to remove Dr. Wang during President Hu's speech. Yasha Levine documents in his book Surveillance Valley that the U.S. government built and uses the internet as a weapon. Falun Gong plays a role in that. At least some parts of Falun Gong organization are financed by the U.S. government through the International Freedom Program run by the U.S. Agency for Global Media, that's USAGM, formerly known as the Broadcasting Board of Governors. The USAGM BBG budget for 2018 was $804 million. A 2011 report by the minority of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee attacked the State Department for being too friendly towards China. From fiscal year 2008 to 2010, Congress provided some $50 million in funding to assist in internet freedom. As of January 2011, the State Department has obligated less than $20 million, of which little went to internet censorship circumvention technology. Some of the most sophisticated internet censorship circumvention technology software is being developed by two U.S. companies whose founders fled China to escape persecution for being members of Falun Gong. Their software was initially designed to allow fellow Falun Gong practitioners in China, whom Beijing authorities continue to prosecute, harass, and imprison, to circumvent the Great Firewall by enabling their users to surf the web as if it were in the US or other internet friendly nations via a combination of proxy websites and virtual private networks. However, both DIT and UltraReach soon found their products being used by democracy activists and ordinary citizens to circumvent internet censorship in Iran, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Egypt, Burma, and Vietnam. Congress has responded by appropriating some $50 million to the State Department to support internet freedom. A footnote confirms that Falun Gong companies received part of that money through the BBG. One of the FY 2009 Internet Freedom Funding documents, the BBG received $1.5 million. The BBG promptly used to contract with DIT, which is the Falun Gong owned dynamic internet technology company, to expand its FreeGate software operations for some $600,000, and with UltraReach, $840,000. DIT, or Dynamic Internet Technology, is run by one Bill Zia. In a 2006 Business Week portrait, he confirms that he is a Falun Gong member. The DIT website lists only 4 customers: the Falun Gong Epoch Times, Voice of America, Radio Free Asia, and the New York and Hong Kong-based propaganda group Human Rights in China, HRIC. Voice of America and RFA are financed by USAGM, BBG. Human Rights in China is financed by the U.S. Endowment for Democracy. Remember Mark Palmer, the CIA, and the Soros Open Society Institute. So you can see why the Epoch Times, despite Falun Gong being widely anti-homosexual, does not discuss the homosexuality issue in their publications, because they are receiving money from the human rights lobby that's made up by intelligence agencies and fifth columnists like Soros and all these other people that are involved in the like of financial scams, globalization, financial scams. I thought that was weird initially. Well, if they believe that, all of these things about homosexuality, why aren't they attacking these individuals? Well, it's because there's other players involved in their movement. as three of the four organizations listed as DIT customers are official U.S. government financed one wonders who finances the fourth. Ultra Reach Internet Corporation does not list any customers, executives, or address. This is typical of Falun Gong organizations. You can't find any sort in the About Us or the Contact Us. There's almost never any names except for the Epoch Times. You get a list of the editors. And New York, you get Stephen Gregory from the Leo Strauss Center, like head of neoconservatism today. Um, who is the editor of the New York branch, which controls the American editorial line. Um, but other than that, you don't get ownership or investors or corporate sponsors, etc. Um, I found some of the Asian Chamber of Commerce's around the United States, which are heavily influenced by Falun Gong. You can get like strategic corporate partners, and it's everyone you would expect: Royal Dutch Shell, um, the Kirkland and Ellis, et cetera, et cetera. But you can't find it for actual Falun Gong based things. There's a Deer Park or Deer River or something in New York where they're developing a Falun Gong retreat center that could be a training camp for more radicals. I mean that's what it is essentially. You can't find any information on who to even talk to. Like who's running it, who. It's just crazy. Um, But so, UltraReach Internet Corp does not list any customers, executives, or addresses. Bloomberg puts the company at an address in Cheyenne, Wyoming, which is of a small house used as a lawyer's office. So it's um, the lawyer just incorporated it at his house, which I've seen that done before. The Lance Law Office, LLC. Um, The US AGM and BBG Internet Freedom Program had a 2018 budget of $13.8 million. Through Falun Gong, the US government provides software and serves for circumventing Chinese Great Firewall. It is somewhat ironic that these services were used by the alleged Chinese government agents that Twitter and Facebook recently removed from their services. In all, Twitter said that 936 accounts originating from within China have been suspended for a number of violations of the company's platform manipulation policies, including spam, coordinated activity, fake accounts, and ban evasion. The social media activity of the suspended accounts, which posted in both English and Chinese, were part of efforts to underline the legitimacy and political positions of the protest movement on the ground, the company said. Twitter, Facebook, and most other Western social media platforms are blocked in mainland China. Most of the accounts identified by Twitter as bad faith actors circumvented the Great Firewall, as the country's digital barrier is known, using virtual private networks, though some were tracked as specific unblocked IP addresses based in mainland China. Twitter's expulsion run was, as usual, badly targeted. The accounts taken down represented the most active portions of this campaign, the company said. That was the news to Luca Ivazic, a 24-year-old student at King's College London, whose account at Tech Politicist had been suspended and appeared on the list of those that said to be run by and out of China. Mr. Ivazic was born in Croatia and says he has never been to China. Recently completed his thesis. The subject, disinformation, and how artificial intelligence can empower the tools that China and Russia have to misinform us. Interesting that King's College is where a lot of the Oxford movement, which was more than just Anglo Catholicism, but also the Orientalists um, and the major influencers on Martinism and Theosophy, like the Buller Lytton family. Um, all of this kind of religious revival obsession with ritual, cult ritual, was occurring at the same time from 1820 um, to the 1870s at Cambridge and Oxford. So we'll talk about that later when we deal with what's his face, Charles Coulomb. An analysis of the total 200,000 accounts. Twitter deleted points to the mostly rented Russian language bot accounts, which are used to agitate against Gui Wengui, a dissident Chinese tycoon who is seeking U.S. asylum. There's also an army of pro Guo Twitter bots who condemn China. That army was, of course, not suspended. The Twitter accounts that tweeted against the Hong Kong riots were not sent by the Chinese government, but by Baidu forum users who flooded Twitter through the Falun Gong virtual private networks the U.S. finances to tweet in support of the Hong Kong police. U.S. government funding for those Falun Gong entities is not the only connection with that organization. Shortly after Falun Gong came to the United States, a U.S. government regime change organization set up by the Friends of Falun Gong organization. Here's Mark Palmer. In the spring of 2000, a group of concerned Americans wanted to take to awareness about the terrible injustice facing Falun Gong practitioners in China. Having the common desire to restore and protect the fundamental rights of the Falun Gong practitioners, they turned for advice to the longtime champion of human rights issues, former U.S. Ambassador Mark Palmer, who is also following the plight of the Falun Gong practitioners. At the same time, Ambassador Palmer was vice chairman of the board of Freedom House, and he still serves on the board. Among his many other achievements, Ambassador Palmer co founded the National Endowment for Democracy. After months of hard work, in November 2000, with the help of Ambassador Palmer and others, Friends of Falun Gong USA was formally established. The Falun Gong cult makes significant money through its Shen Yun propaganda dance companies. And we've already discussed this. Um, it might be well uh, that the Falun Gong generates through such propaganda endeavors is channeled through the media empire into pro Trump advertisement. But the significant support of U.S. government agencies give to Falun Gong, combined with the virulent anti China policies of the Trump administration. So, this is where the Trump administration versus Trump. Trump generally has a positive attitude towards Russia and China. Um, his administration, not so much. Let's one assume that there's also official dark money sources, think CIA, that support the Falun Gong's anti-China efforts, and the CIA works directly through Ned. This has been, pretty much thoroughly proven. Um, Money is fungible. A U.S. government financed organization should not invest it in partisan U.S. politics. Some enterprising Democratic candidates could up their game by taking a deeper look into this issue. Wouldn't it be nice to see a China gate, a Gong gate? Gong gate. I'm just looking through the comments to see if there's anything additional here. Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. It's excellent work, B. Funding what on surface appears to be propaganda op aimed at another nation becomes a form of campaign finance. Um, blah, blah, blah about NGOs. Okay, nothing particularly in depth. But I'll just say I have all these other shows coming up. One on the Gullivan Circle that produced, hey, John Brisson and Tony G. How you all's doing? Um, it's gonna just be a short video, so I won't be on for much longer. But we're going after Charles Coulomb. Um, I would say if you have a Twitter account, just tweet at these people. Ask, in particular, ask like Charles Coulomb um, at RC Coulomb why he promotes somebody who was condemned by the First Vatican Council, somebody who was a Freemason, was always a follower of Claude Saint Martin. Why he promotes Joseph de Maistre so much? Um, R.C. Coulomb's the guy that believes that there should be some sort of. Well, I think he believes the Confederacy should have won the Civil War, and that a Confederate-based monarchy in the United States is, is what all Catholics should aspire to. Um, yeah, we'll, I mean, expose the full bag of worms there later on, but that's the show that's going to be coming up. I don't think the tentative time I have is really going to be the time. Um, and then I also have the show where I'm going to be reading some academic papers, some fairly long academic papers on the Gallivan circles that produced Alexander Dugin, and it actually goes further back into history and fills in some holes that I had missed previously. So yeah, I would definitely though shoot at the Epoch Times some tweets um, about their funding and uh, the fact that they're supporting Soros operations in China, and tweet at RC Cool about how he supports Joseph de Maistre. Now, you have to realize this guy is also close to the Habsburg family, Eduard Habsburg, who is a big personality now, and basically tries to cover up all of the dirty anti Catholic things that the Habsburg family has done, including Otto von Habsburg, including the Habsburgs that joined the Allgemeine SS and did the homoerotic occult rituals of the SS. Um, so, yeah, I mean, this guy, I think, is an example of kind of the pathetic, desperate American that wants to be a European noble. Um, and he's obviously a LARPer, but it's strange because he also comes from a comedian background, just like a lot of these traditionalist pundits that we're seeing come out on the YouTubes and social media. So um, I think he represents another one of these kind of sundry dangerous holy fool archetypes that we're seeing on the interwebs. And those are the people that are the most dangerous because they're not really serious thinkers. They are, as I said, fools and will lead many people astray, like the Pied Piper. So, um, have a good one. Don't read the Epoch Times. And yes, just stay in touch, I guess. Follow John Brisson and Sway Guevara, Tony G if he has a channel. I don't know if he has a channel. Captain Slappy and Vice Up. I just watched a good uh, thing on Vice Up with John Brisson. Always good information there. So yeah, have a good one. Bye bye. This has been I Read Old Magazines. Like and subscribe. Tell your friends to like and subscribe. Share on Twitter. Um, create another account and like and subscribe. Create Fallon. Get some money from the U.S. government and use those bot accounts to like my account. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.